I just don't think I'm cut out for this art stuff, man.
Don't worry, Reed. If art doesn't work out for you, you can always go into politics. Wait, no, don't do that.
From the great masters to the lowliest of Tumblr artists, it seems like everyone hates their own art. Some of it comes from justified discontent with their talents. Others are completely unfounded claims by some of the most talented people you'll ever meet. We all love to hate our own art. Whether it's a humble brag or just genuine disgust for our craft, it crops up in almost every creative field. It took a long time for me to stop feeling this way, and it came from a huge change in mindset. So I figured it might be a good time to talk about that. Now let's be real. Self-hatred is a cancer. It's like any other mind virus. We have to quash that first and foremost. You can't start to love your art if you despise the hands that made it. So one of the most important things to remember is to look at your work objectively. You're going to want to see it as if you're not the one who made the piece. It makes for a much easier time when you remove the personal element from your own work. Usually for me, I see my art as a product. There's always room for improvement, but that doesn't stop me from enjoying the parts I got correct. It seems pretty trite to say, love yourself and you'll love your art. I feel it's more important to look at it as growth. You can visually see how different you were when you started. Sometimes you can even see it between the work you did yesterday and what you did today. So that brings us to our first point. What makes you hate your art? I've found that we tend to be disgusted by viewing the inner workings of things so organic. When you see how the sausage is made, from birth to slaughter, it makes it too personal to assess objectively. It takes a lot of passion to see the beauty in the scars and the stitches that make up our work, the wounds that leak red and the oxidation that's left over. We should pull back a bit farther until those wrinkles and blood becomes the man we see before us. Your work is alive. The pen strokes make the veins that breathe life into your work. Even through all this effort, we still find flaws. We try to cut it apart and sew it back together, hoping to fix the mistakes of the piece. Yet there is a solution. Just start a new sketch, stupid. So when do we start to hate our own work? For some, it tends to be in the first few strokes of the pen. This is when we start to question the process. It's really hard to trust yourself when making art that you want to be meaningful. Most art has an ugly phase. Usually, this is a couple revisions after the first draft. You'll start to take note of the small details that are missing and get a little worried. It's why most artists don't do live drawings with an audience. You always get the one guy in the back heckling. The process of making art is a long and arduous one. You gotta trust the process. Unfortunately, it's harder for some more than others. When does hatred of our own work become a problem? I feel as though this is a problem throughout the entire creative process. Constant bouts of self-doubt slowly leading us to inevitable apathy. There are very few artists I know who like their art. Most end up liking a piece for about 5 minutes after they made it and then wanting to throw it in the trash. It takes a real change in mindset to stop the art to trash pipeline. I know, I'm guilty of it. It was a real struggle to start seeing my work in a positive light. Some of the ways I'd fight back against that mindset was to show my art to people. Just put it out with no context. Let it live or die upon its own merits. One of the worst things you can do to an art piece is downplay it before someone even sees it. Because now you're putting them in the mindset to see the flaws instead of judging it of their own accord. It's similar to YouTube thumbnails. Sometimes people give all the information I need right there. The title asks a question, the thumbnail answers the question. So now I have no need to engage with the art in front of me. When should you be satisfied with your work? This is actually a really important question to answer, because this can mean every time you finish a piece, or every time you achieve a new height for your work. Either way, you should be satisfied by pushing your limits and not letting yourself be clouched in self-doubt or apathy. I've seen way too many artists get popular off of one thing they did, and then spend the rest of their careers trying to recapture that lightning. It's definitely an interesting thought, kind of suffering from success. Where do we usually see the negatives in our work? We usually see negatives in our work that go a bit deeper than what most people see. For me, I think my sketching process is completely whack. It's kind of the opposite of what every art teacher has told me. But sometimes, we gotta accept that these are the hurdles in the creative process. Another big place where we're gonna see negativity is when you have this huge picture painted in your mind, and then when it's put on canvas, it's not what we wanted. So where should you look to find the positives? In general, it's a good idea to see the positives in your work. As it stands, you should be assessing your work like a teacher would. So think about stuff like composition, perspective, and color as a baseline. It's hard to get frustrated when you have already identified the problem and can work to fix it. You just have to make sure what you're criticizing about yourself is actually accurate. You should know that nothing we make is going to be perfect. If anything, it's about embracing and loving the perceived flaws in a work. Think of it like a campy cult classic film. It's not perfect, and that's why we love it. The flaws imbue the work with humanity that we don't see very often. Ah yes, my magnum opus. Well, time to burn it. This is part of why you don't love your art. The creators always want to strive for perfection. It's completely understandable, especially with how much effort we put into the creative process. It's hard to accept that things are going to have flaws and features that we're not too happy about. Some of this comes down to discipline. You have to guide yourself in a positive way that will push you towards your goal. Hating on your own work usually comes from stagnation. We end up getting way into our own heads about it. But why should you love your art? I think this is one of the most important things you can do as an artist. Your work is a part of you, so it only serves you to have a positive relationship with it. It's all too common to be disappointed in a piece, then drop the hobby for months at a time. This mindset really holds our work back and only serves our own apathy. Art should be seen as a stepping stone. One art piece isn't going to be the linchpin for your success. It's going to be a large body of work that shows our growth and creative process. If you choose to throw away your work, you're throwing away your time and not letting yourself see the growth you've made. You should love your work. It's a huge part of your life and will only serve to show your growth as a person. It's generally a good idea to look at your work objectively instead of imbuing it with all these negative emotions. Art is an important part of life and shouldn't be thrown away, regardless of its quality. It's important to remember that whatever piece you're working on currently is just a stepping stone for the next great thing you do. In conclusion, love your art and eat a cinder block.